Hi, you're on the Alice Reddit Stories channel. Subscribe to my channel as well as to my Facebook, the link is in the description. Enjoy watching. Story 1. My fiancé died last week during what should have been her dream vacation. At the beginning of the year, my fiancé, 34F, and I, 35M, decided to go down to Disneyland on Halloween, as her birthday was the day after and her favorite holiday was Halloween. She had also never been to Disneyland before, even though we're from Northern CA. We planned to have our friends, 38F, 40M, and their two young ones, 2M, 8G, join us. Unfortunately, they had to back out due to an emergency surgery for their youngest. However, a few weeks later, I got a nice bonus from work and offered to pay for everything. I still remember my fiancé's excitement when I made the purchase. We're actually doing it. She even scored Halloween tickets to the Oogie Boogie Bash costume event. I'm not into those things, but agreed to make matching costumes with her because she would love it. We began saving up souvenir money immediately, and 7 months later, she had managed to save up around $1,000 for her spending spree and excitement. The day came and we eagerly took the very slow train down the Southern CA. At this time, she had developed a cough. This made the trip miserable, but we figured it was allergies and pushed on. The next morning, we had an amazing day. As Star Wars nerds, we wandered Galaxy's Edge for hours, riding both major rides and later getting our custom lightsabers. The next morning she woke around 4 a.m. with a severe pain in her throat, which we suppressed with good old Dayquil and ibuprofen, but we knew she had a flu, not allergies at this point. She decided to stay at the hotel and recover so she could heal up and enjoy the rest of the trip while our friends went. I stayed back with her. The next morning she woke with a fever of 103. I told her I wanted to take her to the hospital, but we broke her fever within a few hours. This was Halloween, so she told me to go to the bash by myself so she wouldn't feel bad about lost money. I promised to come back with as much free stuff and candy as I could carry. Unfortunately, they were super stingy and I barely got anything. I just spent the event miserable, knowing she should be there. I felt like the only solo person there and I hated it. I got back and she was asleep. The next day she awoke and no change, but nothing new. We agreed to plan out our own makeup vacation in a few months, but just the two of us this time. The next morning, she woke me around 6 a.m., saying her back was hurting along her spine. I tried to apply Biofreeze and alter homemade hot compresses, but nothing worked. I told her if she didn't get better, I was taking her to the ER. She took a nap, and I passed out in the chair next to her. I woke up about 45 minutes later, with her tapping me saying she couldn't breathe. I've never put on my shoes faster in my life. We called for an ambulance, which arrived. By this time her skin was going gray. We arrived at the ER and they immediately began sodium chloride treatment and got her on oxygen. Her blood pressure was abysmal and her oxygen was coming in at around 85 while assisted. For reference, you should be at 100 oxygen. They moved her to the ICU and told me visiting hours were over, but gave me an extra hour to talk to her. She's an emetophobic, so she has an irrational fear of vomiting, which makes taking oxygen very hard, much less taking a breathing tube. I spent time talking to her about these options as she wore the non-rebreather oxygen mask, which made it so she could barely speak. I told her I loved her, but that they wouldn't let me stay. The last thing she told me was she loved me and she wanted to go home. She was so fucking scared. I texted her on the way home, but I never got a response. This is because they put her under and on a ventilator minutes after I left. Doctors told me she was suffering from pneumonia and kidney failure brought on by strep throat spreading into her blood, which now had high acid levels. I obviously did not sleep that night. The next morning, I was there at 6 a.m. because they called me to come in early. As they discussed timeline options, the doctor got a call from nearby UCLA that they were willing to try and take her in to see her specialist since she was so young. That day UCLA takes her in. She's no longer sedate but hadn't woke yet. 3 days go by, I'm by her side every minute I'm able to be. Only leaving to eat, sleep, for only a couple hours at a time and use the restroom. Her fingers, toes, ears, and nose become necrotic, meaning they're going to be amputated, and eventually, they tell me that there's no more brain activity. After 10 years together, my fiancé is gone. The doctors and I call her mother, and we discuss taking her off life support. It's 1 week today, and when I'm not numb, all I can see and hear is her terrified face telling me she wants to go home. Get your damn flu shots, people. Story 2. OOP's fiancé gives her a lackluster ring and proposal, and it takes a turn for the worst very quickly. Does anyone else here, besides me, feel they can't partake in the ring posting on this sub because your engagement ring isn't big, sparkly, or unique enough? November 6, 2022. Trigger warning: abuse. I am feeling a little down after my boyfriend's recent proposal. I said yes, but I am a bit disappointed in the ring, even though I know it sounds very materialistic to say. Even when we first started talking about marriage, been dating for 3 years, I told him that I absolutely 100% wanted to be involved in picking out or designing the engagement ring. And, since we both have good jobs, I would even put some of my own money down to get a ring I absolutely love. What I ended up receiving was a 0.20 carat round solitaire diamond. A few things I told him about the ring as well was that round diamond solitaires on a plain band weren't my idea of an engagement ring, and it feels like he went out of the way to get me everything I didn't want. I also did tell him that because I did want a bit of a bigger stone I would pay for some myself, and he really ignored that request also. I know this part sounds bad as well, but he also hyped up the proposal a lot, and in the end it felt anticlimactic. The whole year, he said he was going to wait to propose around Christmas time when all the lights are up around town and everything feels magical. There is a cute little Victorian-era themed town just a half-hour away from where we live, and that is the most special place in the world to me. This town always goes all out on Christmas for decorations and theming. It really is the most charming and magical place I ever seen, and we go for walks there all the time on weekends. Now, I feel I'll just be sad when we do go there, and I feel he sort of went out of his way to ruin that for me as well. That was literally my dream engagement. He said he was going to make me feel like a princess on Christmas time. He knows how much I love the royal Christmas movies, and instead just proposed in the bedroom before we got up for work. I know some will say that maybe he couldn't wait and that maybe nerves got to him, but he knows I would have said yes anyways, no matter how nervous he was. And, quite honestly, I feel the whole nerves thing is a bit of an excuse. How come men get nervous is always applied to them, but it feels that women are never allowed to be nervous for anything ourselves. I know it sounds mean, but that really is how I feel. Why does it seem he did everything wrong on purpose even when we had open and honest conversations about my dream ring, proposal, etc., and he went out of his way to get all those things wrong? Should I be honest and give the ring back? I feel as though I spelled everything out numerous times, and even though he said he'd remember to make everything special, he very well could have been too interested in what was on TV to really listen to me every single time we talked about it. TLDR, just upset about this whole damn thing, and I don't want the resentment to build up anymore. Notable comments from OOP. And that last sentence is exactly what I'm afraid of happening for the rest of my life. He was always good at being a partner in general, but everything seemed to went downhill after a major life event such as an engagement. If he really is doing this because he doesn't want to marry me, just something I've been thinking about, I really wish he'd be honest with me instead of acting like a child and getting everything wrong on purpose. At this point, I feel I could honestly give myself a better proposal and ring if he, and other men, just flat out refused to do it. Sorry, just a little pissed off right now. My possibly future mother-in-law always sides with my boyfriend because of course he can do no wrong, and I really feel like I have to watch my tongue around her, otherwise I'm the one who ends up in trouble at the end of the night when she goes home and I get the silent treatment. I am so glad his mother isn't afraid to side with you though, and sadly, I wish that were the case for me. If I even express any dislike about the ring in her presence, she'd tell my partner not to marry me right in front of me, and she has done so in the past about other issues, and likes to talk about me like I'm not in the room. She'll say something like, if she's that disappointed, perhaps you should reconsider living with her and come back home with me. Now I'm just like, good. Maybe you two do deserve each other. Update. Update 2. Does anyone else here, besides me, feel they can't partake in the ring posting on this sub because your engagement ring isn't big, sparkly, or unique enough? November 9, 2022. TLDR, my ex and his mother are goddamn babies, and I am so frickin' thankful I never married into a shit show of a family. Hello everyone, I am so sorry I didn't realize how many people wanted an update to this situation. I have been distraught for the past few days, and I just didn't have it in me to use the internet at all during this time. I am feeling 10 times better now. Yes, we are going through a breakup over his stubbornness regarding this whole engagement issue, and, as predicted, an entire shit show went down between his mother and I, to the point where I had to call the police and beg them to take her off my property. I said she was trespassing, which was basically true. The only hard thing is we are stuck co-owning a house together and need to put it on the market and try to sell it ASAP. I am even willing to accept a low offer just to get this fucked up family out of my life for good. Thank God I only dealt with this douche for 3 years, and the next time I smell bullshit coming from any partner or potential partner, I'll be sure to tell them where to go, because I cannot deal with this shit parade a second time around. And people, whether you are a woman or a man, please remember this: when you marry someone, you certainly do marry into their family, so whether you get along with them or not, just remember you are marrying their son/daughter, and will therefore be your legal in-laws for however long you decide to stay married. How everything went down: when my boyfriend came home from work, I sat him down gently after we had both finished our dinner and explained to him that while I couldn't wait to be his wife, there were some things I would like to go over with him in regards to the ring and the proposal. He immediately jumped to the conclusion that I was a selfish gold digger and how right his mother was about me. I know it doesn't seem very mature of me, but I pretty much laughed in his face like, bro, you're calling me a gold digger. Meanwhile, we make exactly the same amount of money and I come from a wealthy family, so therefore I have more money than you and I ought to be calling you the gold digger here. I tell him he's being ridiculous for not allowing me to spend my own money on my engagement ring and how I wouldn't feel hurt in the least if he wanted to do the same for his own. But then he starts shooting off some bullshit how women aren't allowed to decide what their engagement ring looks like, or when and if a man decides when he wants to marry them, or how he's going to propose. At this point, I am screaming because I tell him it's fucking free, I guess besides gas money, which I pretty much pay for anyway, to drive me to the town I've dreamed of getting proposed to for ages, and it's free to look at Christmas lights and go ice skating. He tells me that my expectations are too high. I tell him to get the fuck out of my face for being that damn lazy and selfish. You know what this man baby does next? Well, the mother needs to enter this situation somehow, so he cries and calls her on his phone asking her to come pick her up. I tell him that he's more than welcome to go live with his mother until he's well into his 50s for all I care, but that beast is not stepping foot in my house. He shouts at me that this is his house too, and his mother is more than welcome to help pack his stuff. I figured if this is going to be the last time I see either of them, I'm better off just staying out of the way until they're gone for good. Well, of course mommy has to barge into my grateful and tell me how ungrateful and selfish I was towards her precious boy. I warn her gently that if she comes anywhere near me, I'll rip her hair out and push her down to the floor. I've never felt that angry in all my life and didn't know I had it in me to stick up for myself like that. But then she starts screaming at me that I wouldn't dare and how she'd sue me, and I told her I'd claim self-defense and tell the judge that not only was she trespassing, but willingly threatening me in my personal space and/or harassing me. She initiated the physical contact first by actually hitting my arm, and I reacted by spitting in her eye. I know how awful that sounds, but at that moment when I felt my entire life was falling apart, I was saying and doing all kinds of crazy stuff I didn't know I was capable of. You know how I mentioned how strong and high and mighty she likes to act in my previous posts? She literally starts to shake and starts developing these pathetic crocodile tears and screams for her son to come get her. Fucking baby, acting like a tough bitch all these years, resorts to that the moment someone dares to stick up for themselves in her presence. There's shouting and screaming on everyone's side, and I just call the damn police. My ex immediately tells them that this is his house too, and the officer just looks at him and his mother in disbelief, shakes her head and asks, "This situation is already out of hand." I am going to have to ask you and your mother to leave for at least a day or two until everyone calms down. I am so thankful, she said, that I burst into tears myself. She gave me some very good advice that I wouldn't have thought of in the heat of the moment, and she asked me if I could have some kind of family member stay with me for the next couple days, because she was concerned they would come back and threaten me again. Even better, I went to my own parents' house, and our house is empty right now, as far as I know, but it is getting put on the marker ASAP. Oh yeah. And for those of you wondering, I gave myself a take this piece of shit ring with you moment before my ex and his mother left for good, and I threw the ring past both of their heads when they were heading to their car. The last thing I hear my ex screaming is fuck no, because God forbid he loses his fucking $700 piece of garbage diamond ring that immediately depreciates to $200 the moment it slipped on my finger. He actually thought he could get all his money back for that thing. I am so sorry if this entire post sounded incredibly immature, but that's pretty much all I can give you guys when it comes to my douche of an ex and his mother. Please note that I have absolutely no more negative or positive emotions in regards to this situation, and I am no longer thinking irrationally or planning on doing something irrational to myself or others. I don't give a fuck what my ex does, as long as he doesn't come anywhere near myself or my family. Everything and everyone is perfectly safe and fine, and I really do feel 20 times lighter and happier than I did 2 to 3 days ago. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel. There are many interesting articles ahead.